the, or second item would be the citizens communication. Do we have anyone that's asked to address the board? Okay, thank you. All right. The next item on our agenda is reports from the board's committees. The first one is executive committee, and we did not meet. How about the finance committee, Christie? Okay. Building committee, Mr. Graham?
Is that better, Dad?
Yeah.
Okay. We met and we discussed the possibility of some more economical dorms than some we had looked at before. We're putting together some pricing for some 68-bed dorms that would have the option of being, or 64 beds, excuse me, that would have the option of going to 128. So I think it's a good plan. We're just trying to get some stuff redrawn, some changes, and hopefully get those priced and see what our budget's going to come in at.
Thank you very much for that report. The next item on our agenda would be the Chancellor's Administrative Report. Dr. Wallace.
I'm going to draw your attention, if you would, to the screen. I have a little bit of a PowerPoint to go through. I promise I won't take a lengthy time, but what I want to go through this evening is the final recommendation from the Commission on Community College Finance. And so that they have completed their work. Their work was over a 6-month period, but there was a lot of meetings, et cetera, that took place. And so I want to highlight some changes that have occurred in the final recommendations that you would have not heard from me last month when I reported. There were additions at the very last moment that I think will benefit us, but I just want to make sure we clarify those. I remind you again of our data. We really focused our attention as TAC members on this data in the sense that, I hear an echo. I know. Wonder how I have an echo. Community colleges enroll 43% of all the post-secondary students in the state, so it's important to understand that. We focused on the fact that we enroll most of dual credit in the state, so 92% of all dual credit, and so dual credit, you will see, is going to become a measurable outcome for us that will actually benefit colleges across the state. And then we award over 93% of all technical degrees and certificates, and yet are not direct line item funded like TXCCC is. It does that work only. I remind you of where we've come. And it is a long way. When you consider in 2001 the numbers of degrees and awards awarded by community colleges in the state, and you do now a fast forward to 2021, you'll see the tremendous growth of completion among not only technical and certificates and degrees, but academic certifications and academic degrees have increased exponentially as well. And so it's a doubled number in some of those categories. So 3 buckets we're accustomed to. Those buckets don't change in a sense, because if you look at it, tuition and fees will still be there for each college. Local property taxes will still be there for each college, but state appropriations are going to look very different than they ever have before. So they enacted the bill, they passed it in May of 21. This is the actual language, and the commission had to make recommendations for establishing a state funding formula and levels sufficient for sustaining all the colleges' education and training offerings. That was their mandate from the legislation. So where are we? You see the commissioners. I point this out because I don't know that you've actually been able to really think about who served on this. Mr. Woody Hunt is senior chairman of board of Hunt Companies out of El Paso. He did a fine job. He has been a very staunch advocate for community colleges in the past. He has a close relationship with our colleagues at El Paso Community College, where he lives and does his business. Senator Creighton is the chair, or has been chair, if you remember, of the Senate Higher Education Committee. Now, I remind everyone, we've kind of forgotten this in the last few months. I remind you, there's no longer a higher ed committee in the Senate. There is a education committee in the Senate. Remember that the lieutenant governor combined public ed and higher ed into one. That's not the case on the House side. So as we move forward into the legislative session, we're going to have to negotiate those turns, so to speak, when we're communicating with individuals. I don't know if Senator Creighton's going to be in that position again, because now public ed and higher ed are in one on the Senate side, but he's been an advocate. He was author on the Senate side for the True Initiative, if you remember, and so a staunch a great ally for us. Dr. Escamilla, a president at Del Mar from Community College. Steve Head, Dr. Head is chancellor, Dr. Hillier, chancellor. All these are community college people. That's what was so imperative to us, that we have good representation. Brian Jones is a member of the Texas Community College Teachers Association and represented them from Odessa College. Dr. Brenda Kays is our president friend at Kilgore. Representative Longoria did a great job of making sure rural-based communities were remembered and understanding that dilemma. Carol Scott is chair, or was at the time, of the Community College Association of Texas Trustees, along with being chair of Del Mar's Board of Regents. And so she was the representative from your organization, CCAT. She represented trustees. Senator Taylor is no longer going to be in the Senate, but Senator Taylor ended, so to speak, his service to this by this commission work. But he made a statement at the final meeting for the commission that he's going to make sure that he's around to see this work finished. And so I think that will benefit us as well. Gary Van Devers out of East Texas, State Representative. Representative Van Dever really understands how important small community colleges are to the workforce needs of small communities, and is representing that. And then Todd Williams is the CEO of Commit Partnerships. Todd is a familiar name if you think about the work done under the new funding formulas for K-12 that took place a few years back. So just pictures and being able to put those people in together. This is a really complicated visual that really means one simple thing. We're going from a static formula where everyone had to argue for the same pot of money in separate categories to a dynamic formula where we're no longer competing against each other but competing against ourselves. So the money comes in as you earn it, rather than, okay, the state set aside a pot of money, now let's all divvy it up. Does that make sense? And so that is a really not great visual for that, but that was a hard visual to come up with. So, key changes from the September that I notified you of. Number one, we added through our, I testified to this a few months back, and I'm really happy to say they added dual credit courses as a metric. So we will earn completion monies for students who take dual credit courses. Now, all this is along a pathway. You can't randomly take classes that don't mean something or lead to something. But I love that, because what that means is if you earned a certain set of hours at a community college but never attended us, you did it in dual credit, we're going to get some completion dollars because of that work. And that's huge, because there's a lot of effort being placed by faculty in our infrastructure to support those. They changed the terminology. This was a big sticking point for boards of regents across the state. They originally had set a set uniform tuition rate, and board representation, Army, if you remember, Ms. Chairman, represented CCAT and testified the day I did, said we don't like the notion of the state setting that which we're supposed to set. What it's been changed to is a maximum dual credit tuition rate to qualify you for the financial aid now that's going to be afforded to dual credit students. So you could go over that rate, but you won't be able to access the financial aid from the state. That rate has not been set. That will come in negotiating with our community colleges and ourselves in the legislature to say, don't set it so low that we all can't afford to do dual credit, but don't set it so high that we're taking advantage of that financial aid piece. So that's still to come. You've heard a lot of conversation about this $150 for a 3-hour course. That is not in any of the recommendation. It just says we'll have to work together to set that maximum rate. This is encouraging, and I applaud Senator Taylor for this. There will be a temporary hold harmless. So over the next 2 years, no college will receive less appropriations than they did the previous biennium till we figure out how this is going to roll in. That's really important, because if you noticed, there's going to take a lot of new construction to do this. Melinda Carroll and I, our registrar, others have talked about this is going to be a whole new approach to reporting. The CBM reports of the past are not going to be the ones of the future. We're going to have to report different kinds of completion numbers, different kinds of things, because we've always reported contact hours. Well, contact hour distribution goes away totally. And so that is going to be healthy to say you've got time. And then as a part of that conversation, they gave the commissioner, not the board not the higher ed board, but the commissioner, the ability to manipulate and change in a positive way unintended consequences that may come up during this thing before the next session can meet. So you pass all these laws, you pass legislative session this time. Let's say there's an unintended consequence that hurts 60% of our community colleges. He'll be able to shift that until the next session to make sure it isn't doing that. And so that was a good shift. So these are the things you haven't seen from the September draft. And any questions about those? Any good moves? And I'll argue, based on testimonies of our colleagues across the state, to say these are things that would help us feel really good about the process. So final recommendations, we keep hearing this, and the commissioner has made it clear that the pot of money that's going to take to add to what we already have is about $650 million more state dollars, okay? So that's on top of what we already have. That's not in lieu of, because if you were thinking 650, knowing we receive about 1.2 to 1.4 billion a year for all the community colleges in the state, you would get very nervous and go, wow, that's a cut. This is in addition to that 1.4 billion. So 430 million will go to those outcomes that we've talked about last time and added this time. Credentials of value, degrees, other credentials, both credit and non-credit, finally. Appreciating the notion that you may get a non-credit certificate that's industry qualified. You get a good job, you'll get some points for that. Credentials of value and high demand, students who transfer. That's our academic students. So any academic student's going to be able to help us secure further funding. There was a concern that this would only take a workforce purview. It really hasn't. It's taken on the importance not only of CTE, but also academic. And then that final one is what we talked about with the sequence of courses for dual credit. So 430 million is what we're estimating that's going to be added to outcomes-based. The next is $170 million added to the Texas Education Opportunities Grant. TEOG links performance measures with eligible students, and right now we're only hitting about 28% of the students that could be eligible are getting this, so we want to hit a new metrics of at least 70% of qualified low-income college students pursuing these degrees would be able to get financial aid and get that additional funding. We're still arguing or negotiating the match associated with this, because what we argue is if we continue to have to match this as institutional dollars to it, it's going to be a challenge for us to do that for smaller schools especially, because that gets pretty pricey. Recommendation 2 didn't change much. That was the one about financial aid accessibility for dual credit students through the state. That's not federal financial aid, folks. That's financial aid through state working with TEA, but they put that maximum rate language in there instead of a uniform tuition rate. And then affordability for students is just what we're trying to do is incentivize, as a part of this $170 million, work-based learning opportunities, apprenticeships, work studies. Our deans that are dealing with health science or career and technical programs, we often find it difficult to find a framework in which you can put a student into a work environment and get them paid while they're doing that internship. Monies would be allocated then by the state to help undergird that. And that's going to be a positive for people that are trying to get those credentials but also have to work. And then investment in college capacity. What I say this is, to me, this is a permanent TRUE. If you remember, the TRUE initiative was $50 million. There were 2 versions of it because of federal money that came in, but think about TRUE as all the time being able to have $50 million every time they fund, every time we need, and that's for upstarts of new programs, that's for incentivizing a shared service, and so that will be available to colleges. The other important thing I think you need to know is the conversation is what they're calling leveling up funding, and that's really important for us. The leveling up funding is in addition to these kind of conversations to a certain extent. There has to be monies is the proposal for communities that do not have taxable values that compare equally to other large communities that do have large taxable values. So we don't know. The numbers will come out. We'll begin to play with those. We'll begin to negotiate those numbers, look at data pools and see what that looks like. But what the intent is areas or colleges that are serving taxing entities that have low property values comparatively to other parts of the state would get lifting up or leveling up monies from the state to make them more competitive or able to be competitive versus wealthy taxable areas. It is the closest you can get to equity without a Robin Hood-esque kind of program, which no one was in favor of. And I think that's healthy because what it does is as you grow your tax value, it's not a permanent thing. If a community grows, your tax values grow, you might get a little less. But in the interim, you're not going, well, we don't have the taxable property value to do that thing. It helps to level that playing field. So more to come on that as well. So that's, yes, we don't know yet. There's the scary part. We keep saying we haven't seen data, and that's why the recommendations out of the commission was designed to say, here's what you need to do. The next step we're already in process of is data pools. What does that look like? The way we've chosen to do that as TAC is to say, okay, higher ed, staff, coordinating board, show us your data and what you're thinking, and we will speak to that data. Because right now there are some numbers I don't want to publicly throw out there about how many of our colleagues across the 50 would get extra leveling up funding. The numbers I'm hearing, I don't have based real data on, but they're big numbers. And I will say this, Van Deaver publicly told a group of us the other day, he said there's going to be winners and there's going to be big winners in this formula, but there's not necessarily going to be anyone that loses. So it may be, and I would argue that probably the biggest winners are going to be those that needed it the most, not your large, wealthy taxing areas. And so that is to come. And as that comes, we will negotiate that. We will present that back to our boards to say, what are your thoughts about this? Does this mesh? Because the legislature has to pass all this, and the next big hurdle is the actual riders and the actual law that has to be associated with this to move forward in the session. We'll know everything. It will have to pass by May or be tabled, and tabling it would be ultimately the most damaging thing you could do to the work. And so right now you've got legislators already vying to be the carrier of these bills and asking the lieutenant governor and asking the Speaker of the House for low bill numbers. I don't know how familiar you are with legislation, there's a trick to it. And the lower the number, usually you get that one seen quickly, and if your number's 4,685 bill, you probably won't get that passed. So working on a low bill number to say this is important this year, and I think we're going to get that. There's a lot of input that has come not only from Lieutenant Governor's office, but the Governor's office, from the Texas Workforce Commission, from the coordinating board. There's been a lot of people involved in this process. That's why I think the momentum's there to get it passed. I really do. So there you see formula, financial aid, college capacity to total at 650, minimal 650, not maximal. If we do a good job with our communities to show this importance of this work, we may receive more than 650 from the state, but that's what the coordinating board says minimally is going to have to be added. Questions? You will be receiving updates literally every month during the session from me about this, because we're going to have a hard session. We may call on you to help us carry the mission and the conversations to our legislators of the importance of these aspects, but it's exciting days. This is life-changing and historical. We haven't changed our formula in 57 years, and this is a total shift to a new method. The Legislative Budget Board has been involved in the conversations, yes, ma'am. Or you can forget it. You know, I mean, they have to be involved. Yeah, no, they're not left out. They've reached out to begin that next step process. Any other questions? That's my report otherwise. Okay. I think that was enough for the evening.
Very good. You have let's see, I think you have the next one too.
I did.
The board report for Title, what is that, 9 CEO certification?
Yes.
Dr. Wallace.
So under the Texas Education Code, Section 51.253, pardon me for reading, but I have to, the institution's chief executive officer is required to submit a report at least once during each fall or spring semester to the institution's governing board and post those institutions' internet website a report concerning the reports received by employees under TEC Section 51252 concerning sexual harassment, sexual assault, dating, violence, or stalking as defined by said section, and any disciplinary actions taken under said section, or 2.55 of the subsection 51. For the purposes of complying with the Chief Executive Officer's reporting requirements under TEC Section 51253C, the attached summary provided to the board this evening data includes all required reporting information to North Central Texas College's Board of Regents for the time period of January 2 through October 24th of 2022. The summary data report is categorized based on reporting requirements under Section 51253C. The reports received may be applicable in multiple reporting categories, and therefore the summary data in the categories may not add up to the totals of other categories. We've had that question before because it's kind of complex there. But the summary data report is also posted on the institution's website per public reporting requirements under that section at our Title IX website, which will be provided to the public. Any additional reports received by the Title IX coordinator that do not meet the required reporting criteria have been omitted for the compliance purpose of this specific report. You have before you that chart. You will see number of reports received under only under section 51252. We have had 9. Number of confidential reports under that are 0. Number of investigations conducted are 0. And the number of cases under investigation with no findings were 1. The remainder of those areas remain at 0. You do not have to vote on this. It's report only, Madam Chairman, and I offer that for any questions you may have.
Explain the time period, January to October. Kind of an odd that it's not annual or semester?
There's not a standard.
Okay.
So when the state passed this, there was no standard date and time in which they wanted you to report. They said either do a long fall or a long spring. We've been choosing to do that in October of each year.
Okay.
That just because, and we started at the beginning of the following spring year. It's just how we've reported that. We could always provide you a full year's capture, but this is the legislative requirement.
Okay. Thank you.
And thank you to Dr. Del Rio, who works on this every day. She's not with us tonight, I don't think, but
Yes.
thank you to her for all that work.
All right, very good. Okay, so the next report to the Regents would be the financial report, and I think in Dr. Miller's absence.
That's me again. Dr. Miller is on a SAC COC visit to another institution, which we always enjoy because we learn from our colleagues. But you have before you the statement of funds, pretty self-evident. This is a standard September statement. I would remind you that if you look at the budget comparison, you're going to see that we have no revenue. That's not true. Revenue is missing from the budget comparison sheet because this happens every year at the first of the month, if you remember, the first month, pardon me, of the fiscal year. And so that's due to the time we need to close out the old fiscal year, which precludes us from getting that accurate number. So you'll receive those next month. It resolves itself in the coming weeks, but that's why you'll see 0 there. The remainder of these are fairly explanatory and in good, healthy piece. If you look at the last portion of the report, and of course if you have any questions I'll do my very best, but if you look at cash flow report, I continue to just be so pleased and impressed by that. We continue to have a healthy cash flow which has helped us. And then also you will notice in previous pages we have received, those of you on the building committee and others, we have received the full funding for the Medal of Honor host city with our last museum. That is fully in our control now, that full $5 million. You'll see a little less than $5 million because we have spent some expenses associated with the design. The other thing I would mention is the annual audit is currently underway. And so we're in the middle of that, and we expect the auditors from Schock and Smith to be on campus the first week of November. And so that final report will be presented to the board at a December board meeting, and we'll be taking that board meeting as an audit-only review, probably around graduation ceremonies if we can. So, questions?
Questions about the finance report? All right, thank you very much for that report. Okay, the next report is the 2021 Cleary Annual Security and Fire Report. Chief Shaw.
Thanks for your time and attention this evening. My name is Nicole Shaw, and I do serve as your Chief of Police and Director of Public Safety. In your packet, you have the 2021 Cleary Annual Security and Fire Report as mandated by law. I am here to entertain any questions or concerns that you might have.
Let's see, what did I have a question about?
There were only 2 incidents this year that happened to make it onto the report. Pretty proud of that.
Very good. Remind me, does this report have to be filed with the state as well as, I think, yeah, okay. So we approve it and then it gets filed, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
We
You
don't
do not
approve
have
it.
to technically approve it.
Okay.
It is what it is. We review it with you, and that's the legislative requirement, is the chief reviews it with you as we're doing this evening, and then it goes to a warehouse of these, so to speak, through, I think that's through still San Marcos. I think that's through the
State
campus
Security.
state security, yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions specific to this report? No?
You know, Madam Chairman, I just, if I could take just one moment to say how much we continue to appreciate our police department, our emergency management, our numbers, and we're very thankful. Our numbers are what they are. We would rather there be no incidents, but that's not reasonable, honestly. But when we hear, I don't know how many of you heard today of another school shooting. When you hear about that and you think about the importance of this work, I just, again, applaud our team. I appreciate Chief Shaw, and Dylan is in the back, Dylan Bannister, who is our emergency management director as well. There's a lot of work behind keeping these numbers where they are, so I just want to, on behalf of the college, say thank you to them again.
Absolutely, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Much like the Title IX report, this will also be posted to our website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, thank you very much. All right, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda items A through C. Are there any of those that a board member would like to take off and discuss independently at this time? No? Okay, then I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented. We have a motion made by, I'm sorry. Did someone make the motion?
Henderson, maybe a second.
Mr. Grime made the motion, and Mr. Henderson, second. Okay. Additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your right hand. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, the next item is under discussion and possible action items is the consideration of rescheduling the November and the December board meetings. And I know that we have, get your calendars out.
Yes, ma'am. So one of the challenges, Madam Chairman, was the November board meeting would normally fall the week of Thanksgiving, and we assumed that would be a challenging week for people. And so what that would have normally been is the 21st, and what we are requesting for November is a move to simply the 28th, the following Monday, which is late in the month, and that is why we figure that the December meeting can just take place around a graduation, and we'll speak to that audit-only conversation there for that purpose. But the 28th is what we were wanting to do. That being said, you can let me go ahead to move to December. December 9th is graduation. There are 2 ceremonies that day. There's a 2 o'clock ADN, and Melinda, make sure I'm getting this correct. The 9th is either 2 o'clock ADN, and then the 6 o'clock is the academic AAS, AS, and certificate programs. We were talking about an audit-only board meeting at 5 o'clock, if you would like to do that, and then those that wanted to attend graduation could do so either ahead or after.
And that's on the 9th?
Be the 9th.
Okay.
So graduation, we have 3 ceremonies, and we'll be getting those to you in the next few weeks. But one is on Thursday evening, the 8th of December at 6 o'clock. That is fire science, licensed vocational nursing together. And then we have a 2 o'clock Friday afternoon, which is the associate degree in nursing ceremony. And then the evening of that, the 9th at 6 o'clock, we have all other AAS, AAT, AS, and CTE programs.
All right. I sort of have a conflict on the 9th, but I think I can make it work if we don't have it.
We don't have to do the 9th. We could do, I mean, you could do another Monday evening, December 12th. We will be here.
The college will be open that day?
Sure, yes. The college holiday begins, I believe, the 23rd, if I'm correct. Yeah, somebody check me. Is it the 23rd is our first day off? No, I'm sorry. The 21st.
So you have a whole week.
And the Monday evening, December, doesn't put any time constraints around graduation if that's what you'd like to do. Because we've had that, and that can sometimes be hard if there's questions, or if the audit was needing questions, we're running to a graduation ceremony. You won't hurt anyone's feelings by doing it the 12th,
On the
if that's
12th.
what you'd like to do.
I vote the 12th. I have a retirement party that, on the 9th, so.
Did you say she's the chairman? That's good. You're the chairman, he said.
Okay. Is the 12th okay for everybody? Okay.
So November 28 and December 12th.
Yeah, November
What you
28,
would
and
vote on.
we need to vote on that change? Okay. So we would need a motion to change the November board meeting to the 28th of November, and the December one to the 12th, no, yeah, 12th. No, was that right? 12th. Yeah.
Both at 6 p.m.
Both at 6 PM. Okay, Mr. Henderson made the motion. Do we need a second, please? A second by Christy Morris. Additional discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your right hand. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. All right. I guess we have no reason for executive session this evening, so at this time, we'll make a motion to adjourn. Mr. Henderson made the motion. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, and we will see you in November, if not before.